Kansas City Sports Update Studios. Welcome to Kingdom Radio, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. Brought to you by Arrowhead Update. Join Chris and Richard on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Player FM, Castbox, and all third-party applications. Check us out on Facebook platforms such as Kansas City Sports Update and Arrowhead Update. And if you cannot find us there, Google or search Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Chiefs, and you will find us. Welcome to the Kingdom.
How are we doing, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to Kingdom Radio. I am your host, Richard Smith, and with me, as always, my co-host and senior NFL analyst, Chris Chavez. Chris, I know you're doing well after that victory today, but kind of explain how you feel here to Chiefs Kingdom about the Kansas City Chiefs starting out 3-0.
I'm ecstatic, and I'm super hopeful based on what I saw in the game yesterday, but we'll touch base on that later.
Right, exactly. We have a lot to talk about in today's show. And first off, look, we're going to get the hype up a little bit. 3-0 Kansas City, how's it feel? Well, that's right. The Chiefs won their 2019 home opener Sunday by defeating the Baltimore Ravens 33-28. This game may have felt a little too close for some, but I'll tell you what. I knew we had them, and the team handled their business. Like Chris said earlier, we'll be breaking down Sunday's victory in tonight's podcast, and we'll also take a quick peek at the Chiefs' next matchup against the Detroit Lions, who, surprisingly enough, are also undefeated, but with a tie. They do have a tie on their record. Okay. Let's get the promotional stuff out of the way. Just a reminder, we'll be back at Pizza Shop Platte City for more live podcast watch parties. Week 7 for the Broncos and Week 10 for the Titans. Again, make sure to enter our awesome giveaways featuring signed memorabilia from Tony Gonzalez, Dante Hall, and Derek Thomas. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and like Kingdom Radio to stay up to date with all of our live podcast events. Also, you'll find all the new Kingdom Radio gear, which is now available for purchase. Men's, women's, and children's t-shirts, as well as Kingdom Radio hoodies. Rep your favorite podcast and help us bring Chiefs Kingdom even more awesome content and analysis. You can view and purchase by searching our link, kingdomradio.itemorder.com/sale. Again, that is kingdomradio.itemorder.com/sale. And as always, we're starting a trend here. We're gonna walk around the NFL here and talk about that. And so with that, we're gonna move into our next segment.
This is Around the NFL, brought to you by Pizza Shop Platte City. Go grab yourself a butcher block. Best meat lovers in Kansas City. Pizza Shop Platte City, proud sponsor of Kingdom Radio.
All right, this is Around the NFL, brought to you by Platte City Pizza Shop. Go in there and get yourself a butcher block. The best meat lovers in Kansas City. Platte City Pizza Shop, proud sponsor of Kingdom Radio. Okay, so let's get this NFL stuff out of the way here real quick, Chris. And first up, we're going to talk about the Chiefs' AFC West division rivals. Chris, they all lost on Sunday, giving the Chiefs a 2-game lead in a division only 3 weeks into the season. Kind of tell me about those losses from our division opponents and how much that helps us in Week 3 with a 2-game lead in the division.
That's extremely helpful for us moving toward, I know it's a long way away, but moving towards the playoff picture. A couple of those games were games that these teams should have won or could have won. And not that I'm necessarily rooting for them to win. Anytime that our rivals lose, it's a good thing.
Who did they play? What's the scores? Who did they play?
Oh, okay. So, excuse me. Chargers lost to the Texans in LA, 27-20. The Raiders lost to the Vikings 34-14 in Minnesota, and the Broncos are racing to their worst record in a long time at 0-3. Lost to the Packers at Lambeau Field, 27-16, furthering their curse anytime that they play the Green Bay Packers there. They're winless.
Oh, I love it. I love that. We can just keep that tradition up for for as long as Chiefs Kingdom is around. And it's nice to see us with a 2-game lead 3 weeks into the season. And yes, it might be a little bit too early to talk playoffs, but let's be honest. With the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't feel like it's too early to talk playoffs. Any of these other teams, it is looking real dismal already. I will say the Chargers absolutely have looked flat. I expected more out of them this season, as did others. The Broncos, obviously, I did not expect much out of a team led by Joe Flacco. I've never been sold on Joe Flacco. He's not the answer for Denver. Neither is Drew Lock, which we have, touched base on before. The Raiders losing to the Vikings, I expected that. The Vikings are a better team than a lot of fans give them credit for around the NFL. But again, it's just nice to see the Chiefs hone in, on this AFC West title already, and we're only in week 3.
No, absolutely. And I definitely like the direction that we're moving. If we don't go undefeated against the AFC West this year, I'm going to be highly and extremely disappointed.
And I feel like this is one of those scenarios where I feel highly confident in that. And I know, we had talked during the game, Chris, and I had told you that if Alex Smith was the quarterback of our team yesterday, we would not have won that game. We wouldn't have. So with that being said, if it was an Alex Smith-led Kansas City Chiefs, I might have a little bit of concern. But, yeah, Patrick Mahomes, we're golden. We're golden.
No, absolutely. And like you said, if this had been an Alex Smith-led team in yesterday's game, I'm pretty sure that the Ravens walk away with a sizable victory. Looking at the season, I think that we could potentially be vastly underperforming where we currently are. And with Patrick Mahomes at the helm, sky's the limit with this guy and what he can do with this roster and with all this talent around him.
Right. And so let's jump forward in the game a little bit. And I do want to touch base on this, and then we'll hop back into around the NFL. But with everything that transpired, when the game comes down to the last play, for the Chiefs, like it did yesterday, what was it, like a 3rd and 9, I believe it was. You put Alex Smith on the field in that scenario, I promise you Baltimore is going to get the ball back in their hands, and they're going to have a chance at coming down the field and scoring a game-winning touchdown on us. And that's not a place where I want to put I don't want to put our faith in our defense in a scenario like that. It's not fair to the defense.
Yeah, if we had Alex Smith back there, we probably would have done what the Cleveland Browns did last night against the Rams on 4th down and 9, and pull off some sort of draw play.
Right, yeah, absolutely. We would have been looking more towards keeping the clock moving than getting a first down. Yeah,
and just a little backstory on that play. Friday night, Saturday night, Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, and all of the coaches got together, and they came up with that play, and they put that in case that scenario were to come up in the game. And what were some of the plays that they wanted to come up with? And Patrick Mahomes put that one in.
And I love it, and it worked out perfect, obviously. And I think that's one thing that I really, really love about our franchise and the direction and the trust we have in our quarterback. Patrick Mahomes might be the first quarterback since Lenny Dawson that I feel completely confident in putting the ball in his hands at any given moment and letting him call the plays at the line. He's a genius, and he just has really, really, there's nobody who's ever done it better than him, and he deserves that credit. And so, look, we're going to kind of get back to the NFL here. We're not going to really talk about too many more scores here. We really want to hone in on this Chiefs win right here. But the Daniel Jones era has begun in New York. Jones replaced Eli Manning as starting quarterback for the Giants and went on to lead the team to a 32-21 victory. Jones passed for 326 yards and 2 touchdowns, adding 2 touchdowns on the ground. Saquon Barkley suffered a high ankle sprain and was forced to leave the game early and is also expected to miss 4 to 8 weeks. Now, I know that was a tough pill for you Giants fans to swallow. Amber Rogers, I'm going to name drop you right here. I know it's hard for you to watch Eli Manning come out of the game, but I'm sure it made you feel amazing to see Daniel Jones step in there and see that Dave Gettleman's choice, throughout the draft wasn't a complete disaster like everybody in New York thought it was, because I promise you, when Dave Gettleman drafted Daniel Jones, everybody in New York was like, what is Gettleman doing? So, with that being said, let's talk about that a little bit. Chris, what did you think of the Daniel Jones era, starting 2 rushing touchdowns in the air and on the ground?
It's definitely a good start for him. I want to see more than just one game before giving him the keys to the franchise and to the city. The next 2 weeks, they're up against some pretty weak defenses. So, I'm going to go like 4 or 5 weeks out before I really make my true judgment. Because, we look at, and again, I'm going to refer back to yesterday's game. Lamar Jackson, his numbers in the first 2 weeks against really weak defenses were vastly inflated, and he came up against a very good defense, and he bottomed out. He looked like a somewhat ordinary quarterback back there. I want to hold off on saying anything about Daniel Jones too extreme, but you look at those numbers: 326 yards, essentially accounted for 4 touchdowns. In a first performance, I think every quarterback dreams of that kind of a night.
Oh yes, absolutely, and that's one of those things that, especially with Saquon Barkley going out, the Bears absolutely needed Daniel Jones, to step up to the plate, and he obviously did. So moving on here, that was a great job by Daniel Jones. Tip my hat to him. Gettleman, you made a right choice. We'll see what happens in the future. It's just game 1, like Chris had stated. Right now, the Redskins are playing the Bears on Monday Night Football. Chris, would you happen to have an update on that score by chance?
Yeah, at the moment, it's 11 minutes, 44 seconds remaining in the third quarter. Bears are up 28-3.
So the Bears are making it look easy in D.C., which, that doesn't surprise me, but I would sure like to see Dwayne Haskins do a little bit more. He's starting, correct?
No. Well, actually, I don't know because I'm not watching the game right now. I don't know. Give me a second. I'll pull that up. No, Case Keenum.
Oh, Case Keenum is starting. Okay, now it makes all sorts of sense.
At the moment, he's 11 of 17 with 3 interceptions.
Oh, my.
And Trubisky is finally looking like the quarterback that the Bears drafted him to be. He's 21 of 24, 173 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
I was wondering when he was going to, pick things up this season because, let's be honest, last season he looked great. And then he started out this season, I don't know what Mitchell Trubisky was doing, but this is the Bears of last year. So, hey, what did you say, 28-3?
Yeah.
28-3. Yeah, they definitely have this game in lock and on lockdown. So with that being said, we're going to move on to our next segment.
This is the No Look Pass, brought to you by Sean and Keogh Music Solutions, providing everything from simple background audio to complex creative audio pieces. Bring your project to life with Sean and Keogh Music Solutions.
All right, this is the No Look Pass, brought to you by Sean and Keogh Music Solutions. This is where Chris and I pick each other's brain and ask each other a question off the top of our heads to test our football knowledge. So, Chris, I'm going to let you take off tonight and give me your no-look pass.
Okay, so looking at the rest of our schedule, and I know you kind of have to do this off the top of your head, which teams going down the stretch, now that we kind of like have a good feel for what these teams really are and what they're capable of doing, which teams going down the stretch concern you? Not necessarily scare you, but concern you when we play them.
You know, with all the big-time plays that we gave up yesterday to Baltimore, I will have to say there's one man that has had that trick up his sleeve and has utilized it multiple times in his career, and that's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, how many times have you seen Aaron Rodgers throw that Hail Mary and then come up at the end of the half with a touchdown, or win at the end of the game with a touchdown? To me, that's my biggest threat. I'm not really leaning on anybody in our division to make a splash in the pan, either one in the playoffs or two playing the Chiefs. At the beginning of the season, I would have said, hey, maybe the Chargers will be a wild card team. I don't even feel that right now. The Bears, obviously, later in the season, that's a huge game. Their defense is going to be better. Trubisky's going to step up. But let's be honest. Let's keep it real. Let's talk about the monkey on the Chiefs' back that we really need to take down this year. And my most honed-in, focused game is obviously the New England Patriots. Do I think we will beat them? Yes. I'm confident. Do I think it's going to come back down to a last play? Yes. But this time around, I feel like Patrick Mahomes is going to have the ball in his hands instead of Tom Brady having the ball in his. So, if that answers your question, I feel like the team I fear the most going forward obviously is the New England Patriots, and then those other two teams I had mentioned.
Yeah, the only other one I want to throw out there, just because of how well they're playing, given everything that happened in the offseason for them, is the Indianapolis Colts.
Yes.
Jacoby Brissett has really got this team rolling right now, and we play them after Detroit. And I think that will be a very interesting matchup on Sunday night.
I feel like our schedule has got more interesting, as the weeks go on. Obviously, that happens during the season, but I felt like this was going to be a defense-heavy schedule against the Chiefs. And there's some teams that are showing us they can put up some points. But what I do like is us shutting down a team like the Ravens, because that might be the toughest quarterback that we face all year. So I guess with all of that being said, are you ready for my no-look pass?
Absolutely. Bring it at me.
All right. So we're kind of staying in the same spectrum, Chris. And it does have to do with the remainder of the season as well. I mean, you're pretty good at picking my mind there without even knowing it. But my question to you is, we just faced an amazing quarterback who can obviously spread the ball around the field, make plays. He likes to throw. His favorite thing to do is overthrow his receivers. I'll say that. But, Chris, moving forward, even if we're looking into the playoffs, if we're looking in the Super Bowl, what quarterback frightens you the most in the league stacked up to Kansas City, and who you think can put on a show like Mahomes does?
Wow. You know what? Looking at the rest of our schedule, I mean, you kind of mentioned it with Rodgers. Looking strictly at quarterback, he's really the only one who strikes that sort of like fear in me.
Right.
Looking at, and that's just on our regular season roster. You look at playoffs. I mean, we're probably going to have to see Baltimore again. And Lamar's really the only guy on the AFC side who can really go, quote-unquote, toe-to-toe with Mahomes. And even then, we were able to basically shut him down, quote-unquote, yesterday. On the NFC side, I mean, Goff looked decent last night, but I still got to go with the quarterback who's out for the next 4 to 6 weeks, and he'll be coming back in Drew Brees.
Right.
But that's going to require that we see him in the Super Bowl.
Right, exactly. And I mean, and that's the only way we'll see him. And that makes me feel good about our season, knowing that, the guy that Chris Chavez worries about is the one that ultimately, at the most, we will see in the Super Bowl. But in the same respect, I feel like you get pressure on a guy like Breeze, the whole game is over. It's done. Breeze is done, there's nothing else.
Yeah, and Breeze is very beatable. He's shown that over the years. By no means is he a consistent Mahomes-esque sort of threat. When he has the offensive line blocking for him and giving him time, he's absolutely on that Mahomes level.
Right.
But when he's having to move around, when he's getting pressured, when he's getting knocked around, he looks like David Carr.
I love it. And that's one of those things, you get in his head, it's over with. I mean, the man couldn't even throw the deep ball. He was on his heels all game yesterday. Even the plays that he made, they weren't on purpose. Those weren't designed plays. The man chucked the ball up in the air, and it happened to fall in the right place. And so that's how I look at that. And I'm with you on that one. The Aaron Rodgers type, the Drew Brees, of course we're worried about those guys. And that's really about where it falls. Tom Brady, obviously, we got to watch out for him as well. But, hey, there is no quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, and it's nice that he's our MVP, y'all. Chiefs Kingdom, just let that soak in for a second. That's our MVP in Chiefs Kingdom. And with that being said, I feel like that's the perfect way to go into halftime.
Kansas City, it is halftime. Thank you for tuning in to Kingdom Radio. We will return momentarily.
All right, Kansas City, welcome back from halftime. Look, Chiefs Kingdom, it is now time to break down Sunday's victory over the Baltimore Ravens. And I know Chris is excited to hop into this as well as I am. And let's talk about this. The Ravens got on the board first, scoring a touchdown in the first quarter on a 2-yard Mark Ingram run, but failed to convert the 2-point conversion. Now, we're going to break this down quite a bit, Chris. The first scoring drive, when they ran the ball in for a touchdown, it was a 1-2 yard run for a touchdown, and we didn't stop them. It was a longer drive, but what did you think when the Ravens scored first yesterday?
My initial reaction was, "Oh shit, here we go," but immediately it was a matter of, "Oh wait, we got Mahomes. We're going to be right back in this."
Right.
I think my mind, for whatever reason, even after a year of this, I still stuck in that Alex Smith mindset of, "Oh shit, here we go."
Right. Yes.
It's going to take us a half to score a touchdown.
It's hard not to be in that mindset because it's almost like our neurology is, set in stone for it to go that way. Because let's be honest, before Mahomes, joined the Kansas City Chiefs, it was, well, there's always next year.
Yeah. And, it's just a matter of changing our mindset and knowing that, okay, they can score a touchdown. They can score 2 touchdowns, even 3. By the end of this quarter, we could have the lead again.
Yes, absolutely. And so this was the touchdown where they kicked the extra point, but then there was a defensive penalty, and it put them on the 1 yard line, and they went for 2. And that was the play. Wasn't that the play that Lamar Jackson tried to run into the corner of the end zone and kind of jumped up in the air, and we pretty much laid the lumber in the middle of his back and stopped that 2-point conversion?
Yeah, Derek Nottie ended up stopping him as he was going for the pylon.
And I loved it, too, because, you saw him try to go up in the air, and he was going to attempt to stretch out, but there was nowhere to go, and Nottie just drilled him in the back and put a stop to that play. And that was perfect, too, because, the Chiefs answered back in a big way in the second quarter. And we'll talk about the second quarter here in a few. That's a huge quarter for Patrick Mahomes, obviously, in most games. But look,
yeah, absolutely.
We answered back in a huge way in the second quarter with a 75-yard drive capped off by a LaShawn McCoy 1-yard touchdown run. And it was not, look, we needed that. We needed to get that touchdown to get the confidence because it took us a little bit to get on the board. But then we took the lead, and that was huge. I think that was a huge key factor going into the rest of the game, that immediately when we scored, we were at a 1-point advantage because the blunder. Look, I will say this right now. Harbaugh coached recklessly, and I feel like he felt like his back was up against the wall and had to against a player like Mahomes. He didn't want to turn down any opportunities. I felt like that he had a little bit too much confidence against Kansas City's defense and felt like he'd kind of walk all over us. And, we proved him wrong in a huge way because, look, after that, the touchdown with the LaShawn McCoy 1-yard rush, the Ravens failed to convert on a 4th down, and the Chiefs got the ball back near midfield. So would you say that John Harbaugh's play calling was more aggressive than he probably should have been?
Given the Chiefs' offensive ability to put up points the way that they can and have so far this season, I kind of have to give him credit to where he was trying to get as many points on the board as possible. He knew that going for or punting on 4th down, that's an empty opportunity to potentially get points. And was he playing risky? Heck yeah, he was. But when you play the Chiefs and this offense, that's kind of what we do to teams, is we put them in that position where they feel like they have to be risky. They have to take every opportunity to put up points on the board. And as we saw yesterday, that didn't work out for Harbaugh. Had things gone the other way, they could have potentially had a tie game there at the end, and we go into overtime again. Right.
And I'm not sure if Chiefs Kingdom knows the connection between Harbaugh and Andy Reid, but Harbaugh was underneath Andy Reid in Philadelphia for almost a decade. So there's a huge relationship there, and I feel like that Harbaugh went at this approach was like, okay, I'm going to be as aggressive as possible. We're going to go at this, at a different angle and see if we can't steal one, out from underneath the Kansas City Chiefs at home. And it almost worked. I will say that outside of New England, that was the Chiefs' biggest test for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, well, and it's also kind of touch on this as well. I think Harbaugh knew that his biggest strength was keeping the Chiefs' offense off of the field and having his offense on the field.
Right, and he did a great job of managing the clock. I will say that.
Yeah, running the ball was fantastic on his part. It controlled the clock, and I think when you and I were talking about it in the second quarter. I think after our first touchdown, it's like they had already had the ball 3 drives, but it was midway through the third quarter, and I was wondering if we were going to get the ball back again the way that they were driving and controlling the clock, and if they had been able to continue that game plan, I think that the second half would have rolled out very differently. But because of, and we're going to touch on this, because of the points that we put up in the second quarter, that completely changed their game plan when they went into the halftime, and they had to make adjustments.
Yes, and look, it really all started with the Ravens failing to convert that fourth down that put us at midfield. And realistically, it wasn't that bad of a call because, the Ravens were just out of field goal range, but just inside range of where you wouldn't want to punt. So it wasn't a bad move by Harbaugh, but it did prove to bite him in the butt because we stopped them on fourth down, and then the Chiefs quickly capitalized on a 2-minute and 43-second drive, which ended in probably the best reception of Demarcus Robinson's career. That corner one-handed touchdown, getting both feet down, which was a great touch pass by Mahomes as well. But that put us up 14-6. And Chris, please talk about that touchdown reception by Demarcus Robinson, because that was a dime. It was a gem, and that's something that Demarcus Robinson should be absolutely proud of.
Okay, so not only was that the catch of his career up till this point, I would venture to say that that's going to be easily top 3 catches of the entire season.
Right.
As well as for the NFL season. It was an absolutely tremendous catch. Mahomes threw it to the spot before Demarcus Robinson and breaks to the outside. He's still running to the inside, and when that ball gets thrown, stops, cuts outside, and then makes the catch. Gets both feet down before he gets to the sideline, and still has the ball one-handed, and it was tremendous.
That was one of the most beautiful catches I'd ever seen any Kansas City Chief make, and I will tell you what, our depth will not cease to amaze me. I love what Andy Reid's doing. I love the fact that all of our depth gets progressions all the way through the week leading up to these games to make sure that when plays like that happen, a player like Demarcus Robinson can come up with a career touchdown and a highlight reel that will stand in Chiefs Kingdom forever. And here's the thing, and this is what I love. That was a career catch. It was beautiful. He got mossed. Hey, look, Demarcus Robinson mossed him. But here's my thing is, it's not going to be the only time this season. There's going to be tons of dime catches, plays, just like last season. The Chiefs are just a huge highlight reel. And it's a lot of fun to watch, especially here in that second quarter. And we're going to touch base a little bit more on the second quarter because they were not finished. As our defense, look, we came up with some really good stands there in the first half against the Ravens. I was proud of us because, after Demarcus Robinson scored that touchdown, we forced a punt, and the Chiefs scored another touchdown before the end of the half. And this time, and this was beautiful because, look, this was the 83-yard bomb to McCole Hardman, which put the Chiefs up 21-6. But here was the thing about that. McCole Hardman exceeded speeds. He was faster than anybody in the NFL on that play up to that point. That was the fastest play in the league this year, and I believe he got up to like 21 miles an hour, and he even stated, this sounds McCole Hardman-ish. He said that it was him at 80%. And if that's him at 80% and you're getting up to 21 miles per hour and you are the fastest person in the league and the legit fastest person in the league is standing on our sideline right now, the rest of the league is in serious trouble come playoff time.
Oh, absolutely. And a couple things I want to touch on with that. And I'm going to kind of toot my own horn on this. When you watch the replay, Earl Thomas bites on the underneath route. And he comes down to watch the underneath route. Meanwhile, Hardman runs past him, and the ball gets thrown right to where Thomas should have been. And he brings the ball in beautifully, and then it's a nice, easy jog into the end zone for him.
Right. Right. And it was amazing. And like you said, he only got up to 80% speed, but that was another highlight play. I mean, come on now, an 83-yard bomb. We couldn't ask for a better scenario than that, especially to put us up 21-6. And surprisingly enough, the Chiefs got the ball back one last time before half and had 3 points on a 42-yard field goal by Harrison Butker, putting the score at 23-6 at the half. So the Chiefs were really on fire. Another great second quarter by Patrick Mahomes, which we absolutely expected, and we will expect that to continue as well. So, is there anything you want to add on about that first half before we move on to the second half, Chris?
A couple things. In the first quarter, the Ravens were definitely knocking around our offensive line, especially on the first drive. And I think it was the first drive, maybe the second drive, where I think it was Wiley who went down with an injury, but he ended up coming back in. After that injury, the offensive line really gelled together, came together. Mahomes didn't take another hit, but it was a completely different game after that instance. The adjustments were made, and he wasn't getting pressured as much. He wasn't getting hit as much, and the offensive line was then starting to control the defensive line of the Ravens, which also allowed us to start running the ball more as well, going up and all the way up to the fourth quarter.
Right, which was nice. I liked for us because, look, the Ravens controlled the clock in the first half, and I feel like the Chiefs did a better job of controlling the clock in the second half with what they had to work with because I will say that Baltimore kind of came out on fire in the second half. It was. I love the first half. We did a really great job of bouncing back and creating some plays, and giving us a great lead into halftime. And you talked about those adjustments and stuff, and so we're going to let's talk about the adjustments after halftime, because this is really where the test was for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I felt like this is probably one of our biggest tests of the season was the second half. And the Ravens came out after the half and got the ball first, taking it 75 yards on another Mark Ingram touchdown, this time a 19-yard run. And the next score came, we're going to stop there. We're going to talk about that. So the Ravens came out on fire. Mark Ingram, second touchdown. What were your feelings there when you saw them come back out and score a touchdown? Was it one of those things that, no big deal, Patrick Mahomes will get the ball back in his hands and we'll take care of this problem?
At that point, I had the confidence that, it was 23-10, I believe, at that point. Mm-hmm. 23-12. I wasn't concerned. It's just another score. We have a good enough lead. Don't worry about it. There's still plenty of time. We've got this in the bag. Nothing to freak out about.
Right.
That was my reaction.
And I felt the same way. And then, with the next score coming from the Chiefs later in the third quarter when LaShawn McCoy caught a 14-yard reception from Patrick Mahomes, putting the score to 30-13. That was a great play. It was nice to see us pull that little trick out of the bag and get LaShawn McCoy in the end zone. Again, I believe, was that his second touchdown of the day or his first?
That was his second.
Okay, yeah, so it was nice to get him back in the end zone again and put us up 30-13. Especially on a day where we thought that his production might be limited due to that high ankle sprain, but he proved everybody wrong in Chiefs Kingdom. And I'll tell you what, I'd love to hear that press conference of LaShawn McCoy and how he felt playing for the Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium with that crowd in the home opener. I'd love to hear that interview.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic to hear him say that football's fun again.
And I love that. And look, coming from Buffalo, you have to expect, in a way, things not to. There's no way playing football in Buffalo is the same as playing football in with the Chiefs, and I know he's having a blast. There's no other way to explain it. It's got to be epic and groundbreaking, and probably career changing for an older player like Shady McCoy. And I'm really happy that he's a part of this roster, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely. For him to get reunited with Andy Reid, I think was a tremendous opportunity for him in his career to get reunited with the man who he looks up to as much as he does.
Right. Okay, so after the Shady McCoy touchdown, the 14-yard reception, the Ravens answered back with a touchdown drive when Ingram found the end zone for the third time of the game, but the Ravens failed again on a 2-point conversion, leaving the score 30-19. At this point, I had thought about how much production how much production that Mark Ingram was having against the Chiefs, but then I realized something. If anybody's going to have a productive day against the Chiefs, I would much rather have it be Ingram than have it be Lamar Jackson, who only threw, 2 completed receptions to his main receivers midway through the third quarter. Wasn't that the stat you had told me?
Yeah, I think it was at the end of the third quarter. He had only completed 2 passes to his wide receivers, one to Snead and then one to Brown at that point.
And I feel like that says a lot about our secondary and, where it has progressed to and the trust that we can have in them, because they do have good receivers. There's, they have a nice young receiving core, and, also Lamar Jackson was getting pressured all day, and I can't tell you how many overthrown passes he had. It was ridiculous. He had a miserable day passing, but it couldn't have been, a better scenario for the Chiefs.
Yeah, no, he was getting pressured left and right. The sack tallies, quarterback hits don't necessarily tell the tale, but it was great to see him having to run for his life, so to speak.
Yeah.
Especially through the first 3 quarters. And to see the stat of him only hitting... Hey, sorry about that, Chiefs Kingdom. We had to take a quick break there. We're going to hop right back into this. Talking about the Chiefs secondary, against the Jacksonville Jaguars, our secondary allowed a passer rating of 122.5 to a 6th-round pick rookie in his first NFL game. But since then, the defense has allowed passer ratings of 61.1 to Oakland Raiders' Derek Carr, and on Sunday, just a 70.6 to the Ravens' Lamar Jackson. I know that you guys really want for us to make a trade and bring in a big name cornerback. I think we're doing okay, you guys. We're moving in the right directions here. I like what we're seeing, especially with the scheme and the play of our safeties. They're doing tremendous jobs back there. Thornhill, Honey Badger played the game of the season so far for him. He really stepped up in the game yesterday.
And I have to agree. And it was nice to also see Frank Clark get a sack there towards the end. But okay, so like we said, where did we leave off here? We talked about Ingram finding the end zone for the third time in the game. But again, the Ravens failed on 2-point conversion, leading the score 30-19. Then later, both teams added another field goal, and the score was 32-22, getting later into the game. And it got a bit closer in the fourth quarter as Lamar Jackson rushed for a touchdown just before the 2-minute warning. Now tell me, what was your feelings when Lamar Jackson got into the touchdown, got a touchdown right there at the 2-minute warning? Did you feel like we were still in great position to win this game? Or did you feel like this was like an Alex Smith game of the past where we had something to worry about and possibly might lose this game?
So I felt great because while they're getting closer, okay, we still have Patrick Mahomes, we still have plenty of time on the clock, and we're about to get the ball back. And even on top of all that, we still have the lead.
Right.
You got Patrick Mahomes plus the lead. I feel confident we're good.
And I agree with you on that one. But, I wanted to hear your take, give Chiefs Kingdom a little more confidence about, where we were at in this game. Because, an Alex Smith-led team, like we said before, it could have gone either way. But with that being said, we'll move forward here because we know what happened, and let's break this down a little bit. Let's see. Like we said, the Ravens, went for two again for the third time on that touchdown and failed to convert yet again, which was huge. That was the biggest play that actually kept the Chiefs up by 5 and made it a 2-possession game instead of it coming down to a field goal. So the Chiefs offense got the ball back after a failed onside kick attempt and were able to run down the clock to secure the win at Arrowhead. So let's kind of discuss this matchup a little bit. And, I'm really impressed with Mahomes. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes completed 27 of 37 pass attempts for 3 touchdowns. Darrell Williams and LaShawn McCoy split carries. Williams rushing for 62 yards on 9 carries, and Shady went for 54 yards on 8 carries. Now, the man that you said would have the big day. Talk about Travis Kelce a little bit. He led. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, man. Travis Kelce led all Chiefs receivers with 7 receptions for 82 yards. He didn't see the end zone, but whenever they needed a big play, they were finding him right in the middle of the Ravens' defense. And he was making catches left and right. He didn't really get a whole lot of yards after the catch, but that was fine. That's not what they needed him to do. He just shielded off his defender and caught that ball.
Right, and I'll tell you what, Kelce always seems to be open. I would love to see Kelce get in the end zone a little bit more, but I also can't argue with 87-yard touchdowns, from Mahomes to Hardman. So he had a big day. He had more receptions than anybody on the day, which is great. I love seeing Kelce get in the mix. So let's talk about McCall Hardman. He led the team in receiving yards with 97 yards. Seemed like he had more than that. And, a touchdown. And that was the big highlight touchdown, besides DeMarcus Robinson for the day. And I really enjoyed seeing him get in the mix, and it kind of shows us what we have for the future. And so let's talk about that play just a little bit because, that touchdown by McCall Hardman, he got up to a faster speed than anybody in the league. And we thought that we had that solely with Tyreek Hill. Now we have 2 players on our offensive arsenal that could potentially be the fastest in the league. How does that make you feel, Chris?
I feel like a zookeeper because we got Cheetah 1 and Cheetah 2.
I love how you put that. I love that.
Then you got Sammy Watkins and D-Rob, who can absolutely run just as fast as most of the other fast wide receivers in the NFL as well.
Yes.
And, Legion of Zoom doesn't even do justice to what these guys can do.
No, and what's crazy, too, is Sammy Watkins having a mostly quiet day, but still registering 5 catches for 64 yards.
He was very much the Travis Kelce of our wide receiving corps. Whenever we needed a big catch, he was there and he made it.
Right, and it was great. And so, thus far, Travis Kelce, 8 receptions. McCall Hardman, had his touchdown. Sammy Watkins, 5 catches, 64 yards. DeMarcus Robinson had 3 receptions for 43 yards and that amazing touchdown. And the Chiefs running backs caught the ball well out of the backfield as well. McCoy had 3 receptions for 26 yards and a touchdown. Darrell Williams had 5 receptions and 47 yards, including the 16-yard reception following the onside kick attempt to seal the game for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I was really impressed with the running game because that was something that had been lacking the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, even in the first 2 quarters of the game, we didn't really have much of a running game. But then we started utilizing the running game to wear down their front 7. And in that second quarter, man, it just really hit them. And finally, in the fourth quarter, they made the adjustment of starting to do more of a rotation. And that's when they started to get a little bit more pressure on Mahomes and control our offense a little bit more. But I think once we start to learn how to negate that pass rush or that run defense, that's just going to open things up for us. I mean, the screens that we run, they're basically just a running game for us. Just it's moving the ball out to the outside where there's nobody in front of us.
And which I love because in return, Patrick Mahomes gets the stats for it.
Yeah, exactly. And for all you guys who have him on your fantasy leagues, you're welcome.
Right, exactly, yeah. And I have to agree with you. Like, yeah, you are very welcome for that. And he's on my fantasy team, to be perfectly honest with you, and I couldn't be more happy about that. So let's move to the defensive side of the ball here. I'm going to let you start off a little bit with the defense. Kind of tell us about what's going on and what we did here.
Okay, so although we didn't put up a bunch of stats like we've kind of talked about, we only had 3 sacks, 1.5 coming from Emmanuel Ogbah. The Chiefs failed to score or failed to force a turnover, although Honey Badger had 2 opportunities for interceptions where they just went through his hands. And then he had 3 passes defensed. I'm not sure of exactly how many we had, but I remember Frank Clark getting a knockdown. Ogbah had another knockdown, and somebody else had another one as well. I mean, we were knocking the balls down all over the place. Lamar Jackson was definitely rattled all throughout that game based on the performance of these guys and what they were doing. The Chiefs gave up a lot of yardage on the ground. We gave up 203 yards in the run game, but we limited Lamar Jackson and primarily through the air, but also in his ground game. He only had, I believe it was 47 rushing yards. Passing game, I think he had 284 yards. Don't quote me on that, but I know there's a ballpark there. And you look at what the yards that he was getting, the majority of that went through his tight ends, and it wasn't even his big weapon in Mark Andrews. It was his other tight ends.
Right.
I believe Hollywood Brown only had 2 or 3 catches, and none of them were the big game breakers like he's had the last 2 weeks. Snead had a handful of catches, but they weren't anything really to look at. We shut down the big playability that these offenses last year were turning to in order to keep up with the Chiefs' offense. Our defense now, especially with our safeties, are negating that, and we're forcing them to play underneath, which is fine. Let them run the clock, because that's going to do them a disservice, because they need that time on the field to score more points.
Right. Yeah, and
it's a great team adjustment for that Spagnuolo is bringing into this defense. It's fantastic.
Yes, and look, I feel like that we took the passing dimension out of Lamar Jackson's game, and we forced them to stay on the ground, which Mark Ingram had a big day, and I expected that. But I was really proud of what our defense did by keeping, Lamar Jackson in check throughout that whole game, because, that's something I talked about. I felt like that there was going to be a huge day for Chris Jones, because I felt like he was going to be the anchor of keeping Lamar Jackson in check with, without the factor of over pursuit, because Lamar Jackson is one of those players, you over pursue him in the rush or on the defensive line, he's going to take advantage of that. He's going to slip through there, and he's going to take off huge chunks on the ground. And I felt like we did an amazing job of limiting him, to those big plays on the ground, as well as keeping the pressure on him all game long, to where he didn't feel comfortable in the pocket. You could tell he was rattled. The overthrown balls over and over and over and over and over again, it was just, you could see it in his face that he was rattled playing the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked fantastic to watch that happen to somebody who really is developing into a fantastic quarterback in this league.
Yes, and and then also at the same time, us stopping them on fourth downs, and the 2-point conversion plays. I mean, those were huge. Those defensive plays ultimately, set the tempo for us to win the game. Because I mean, it could be. Look, those 2-point conversions that we stopped. You put those back on the board. Look, we're down. We are down in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, those stops, although they don't look big, or they don't really show the stats, but those were huge stops by our defense. They were tremendous.
Yes, because, I mean, let's be realistic about this to the T. You put those 6 points back on the board, that's a loss. That is a loss on our win-loss column. And so the defense really stepped up, and I feel like Chiefs Kingdom needs to understand just how much they did for us in this game, outside of Patrick Mahomes, because obviously Patrick Mahomes, he gets the credit. He's the highlight reel. But there was a lot to take away on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm proud of our defense. Outside of giving away those stupid, Hail Mary plays, but look, the other teams are guilty of giving that up to Kansas City as well, and that just comes with having a good quarterback who doesn't ever stop and players who keep running. And Patrick Mahomes, obviously hones in on that with our offense. Keep running. And Baltimore showed that against the Chiefs. But look, when it comes down to it, the Kansas City Chiefs are 3-0. We really did a great job against these Baltimore Ravens on all facets of the game. Besides the running game. But we couldn't stop everything. And I feel like we honed in on enough, obviously, to take this victory, put us up 2 games in the division, and beat possibly the second best team that we will see all year long. Maybe the best team. We'll see how it plays out for the Ravens. But this was a huge, huge win for the Kansas City Chiefs and Week 3 of this 2019 season.
Yeah, it was tremendous, and it's definitely going to be, like we said in the pregame, this is going to be one of those games where we're going to look back and say, this is where we took that next step.
Right. And we should be, I feel like that our team in Kansas City, we're not giving them enough credit for beating a team like Baltimore. But just wait, Kansas City. Wait till you see how Baltimore turns out. This was an extremely good team. This is a team that might even be able to go in and beat the Patriots at some point during the season. So we should feel extremely confident that we're 3-0. Moving on, to this next week's game with another team that's undefeated, which I really am shocked about this, but at the same time, they do have a tie on their record. The Chiefs will travel to Detroit and face the Lions this Sunday at noon. The Lions are technically undefeated, although they have one tie, which we've talked about that multiple times tonight, and are sitting at 2-0-1 on the season. But the Lions are coming off a big win against the Eagles on Sunday, 27-24. And, the Eagles are a big product of, this Andy Reid system. There's a lot of, Doug Peterson, a lot of connections there. The system's a lot of the same. But I don't, look, the Lions are not going to beat Kansas City. I'm just going to put that in there right now. If we're going to beat the Ravens convincingly, and I want to say it was a convincing win. They got a little bit close to the end, but if we can beat them convincingly, we should have no problems against a team like the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to this game, and kind of like the Jacksonville game, I kind of expect for us to really run away with this one toward the end. It's going to be a good matchup to break down, and I look forward to doing that later on in the week more specifically. But I really like our chances against the Lions.
Yeah, I think we will perform well. Again, this is going to be a huge day for somebody. Let's just pull the rabbit out of the hat. We don't know. We don't know who the huge day is going to be for, but Patrick Mahomes is going to blow up the scoreboard. We'll have a multiple receiving touchdown. receiver. I'm sure our ground game will take off. This might be a big day for our ground game against a team like the Lions. But also, keep in mind, this is a dome game. I will tell you what, Patrick Mahomes has not got to play in many dome games. And let's remember that Atlanta game, in preseason, with that, 75-yard bomb through the air to Tyreek Hill. We might see that out of McCole Hartman this game. So the elements are not a factor, which makes Patrick Mahomes an even more sharp tool, to pull out of the shed. So how do you feel about us going into Detroit, into a dome, facing a team that's 2-0-1 with what we have already done here throughout the first 3 games of the season?
I'm going to call it right now, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Perfect. I love that. What about our ground game?
Ground game, I think, is going to be more in the screen game. I mean, we're going to get some yards in the second half because we're going to try to control the clock. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think that we're going to see a lot of yards in the air.
Right, and I also want to see where we stack up here midweek when the late week injury report comes out for both teams, and that'll present some major mismatches. Whichever way it falls out between the Lions and the Chiefs, but we also know that Big Red is going to exploit all those weaknesses in the Lions more so than what's the Lions coach came from the Patriots.
Matt Patricia.
Yes, Matt Patricia. And don't get me wrong, I feel like Matt Patricia is a great defensive guy, but you cannot contain Patrick Mahomes. I don't care what anybody says, you just can't do it. There's no containing Patrick Mahomes. He showed that against the Ravens here, against probably the closest thing to Patrick Mahomes in the league, which is Jackson. So, what do you think? 4-0? Are we going to go 4-0 going into Week 5?
Absolutely.
I have to agree with you, and there's nothing inside of me that thinks the latter, and I really look forward to this game. Look, there's something about the Lions. Like, I feel like we're just going to beat up on them. We're going to show the Lions what they truly are and what the Chiefs truly are. And this has been, a mediocre team in the NFC the last 10 years that probably should have been better than what they were. And I think the Chiefs are going to come in there and just rock the Lions. So we'll have to wait and see. But look, here's my thing. We took care of the Ravens. That was the biggest thing that we could do. The final score was 33-28. Patrick Mahomes had a huge day. McCole Hartman had a big day. D-Rob had one of the biggest catches of his career. Everybody got in the mix. Darrell Williams, LaShawn McCoy. I mean, it was just a huge, huge day all the way around for everybody. Frank Clark finally got himself a sack. Agba got himself a sack. The Honey Badger got himself in the mix a little bit. Probably could have had, a couple interceptions. But it's just nice to see them all get in the mix and start gelling a little bit because that's what we needed. It was the perfect timing against a team like the Baltimore Ravens. We needed that, and I could not be more happy with the outcome.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic output all around. Although the stats don't show it, it was a very well played game all the way around by the Chiefs.
Yes, and I completely agree. So, with that being said, I would love to thank Platte City Pizza Shop, our main sponsor. I also want to thank Arrowhead Update and Dylan Humphreys. Also, my co-host, Chris Chavez. Chris, thank you. I love talking football with you. It's always a pleasure every time you come on the show.
Likewise, it's always a pleasure to be here to talk football with you.
And last but not least, and Chris, I'm sure you agree with this, thank you, Chiefs Kingdom, because without all of you, none of this would be possible. And Chris, if there's nothing else left to be said tonight, we're going to leave Kingdom Radio right here. But what do you think? You got anything else to add to the show this evening?
Yeah, just really quickly, and I know that this guy kind of deserves a little bit more than just a minute, But yesterday, the Chiefs Kingdom ended up losing a former chief. E.J. Hall passed away yesterday. He was one of the very first Chiefs when we when we moved to Kansas City. He was originally drafted by both the Cowboys and the Texans, and he chose to play for the Texans. And then he came with the team when they moved up to Kansas City, and he played with the team in both Super Bowls 1 and 4. So I just want to give a shout out to him, and rest in peace there, bud.
Yes, and thank you for touching base on that, Chris. Everybody in Chiefs Kingdom is family. It doesn't matter how much time has passed since you took the field for the Kansas City Chiefs. You are absolutely always a part of the family. And rest in peace. Prayers to his family. Look, it's a part of life. And I'm just happy that this man had a great life and was able to, do the things that he did. And let's be honest, it's hard to be a professional football player. That's something to be proud of. His family should be proud of that. So rest in peace to his soul. Rest easy, knowing that you got Patrick Mahomes at the helm, and probably we'll see another Super Bowl here this season, to follow the legacy that you and, your generation created for this Chiefs team that we have taken the field in 2019. So, with that being said, again, Kansas City, my name is Richard Smith. I'm the host of Kingdom Radio. We thank you for joining us. We look forward to speaking with you here in the pregame show to Detroit. So, Kansas City, you have a wonderful evening. It is 10 p.m. We're going to get off here, let you listen to this podcast before you hit the sheets and get up for this upcoming work day. And hey, y'all better be prepared, because I know that it was a long week. You had a long day at the home opener, and we couldn't be more impressed with where the season is going. Go Chiefs, 3-0, head into week 4. Detroit Lions, we got this, Kansas City. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for tuning in to Kingdom Radio, your go-to podcast for everything Kansas City Chiefs.